And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a game called Tumble Town. Tumble Town is not full of tumbleweed, instead it's full of dice. In this game, you are building buildings out of dice, but it's not a dexterity game like you might think, but instead, it's a game in which you are drafting dice, rolling them, and then manipulating them to build buildings. Incidentally, this is the second game this week I'm talking about dice manipulation, but let's take a look at this, partners. Here we go. In this game, each player is going to start with a town, and the game comes with different levels of towns you can play with that essentially have different kinds of bonuses, and I'll talk about those in a bit. Each player is also going to start with a horse. The horse gives you the ability once per round to add or subtract one from the value of a die, and secretly at the end of the game, the different horses, this one's Kermit, will give you points for different symbols that you have. Now, on a player's turn, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to claim a building. There's going to be a certain number of cards in these piles. There's 3 levels of piles, and there's going to be a certain number of dice that are available. So let's say maybe for my first turn, I'm going to claim the stable here. So I'm going to take this building. It also gives me dice. So this gives me 2 brown and 1 gray. I look at the back of the card of the pile. So I roll that. I have some dice that I've rolled here, and I'll replace this card. Now I need to make this building. I need 2 brown and a gray die, and they all need to be odd. Well, you know what? I can do that because my gray is a 4, but remember, I have that horse. So I'll use that horse to subtract 1 and turn that into a 3. So now I put this building together. The dice that I'm not using, I had a couple dice in the storage. I'll leave them in the storage for next turn. So now I take these, I build this building, and you can mirror it if you want. And then I'm going to place it on my main street somewhere. So I'm going to place it here, I guess. Here, I'm going to get a bonus point at the end because I put a gray die in this spot. And this one, any color die fits in that one. This needs a level 2. I'm not going to get that, but I'm not going to be able to do everything. So as you build the different buildings, let's say, for example, I built this bakery here. I might say, oh, if I put that here, it fulfills 2 properties, a brown die and then a level 2 building. Each of the buildings is going to have different requirements. I've already mentioned the different colors, but all the numbers need to be between 4 and 6. This AABB here means you need 2 pairs. Or up here in these really expensive buildings that need a lot of the gold dice, the total number needs to be 11 or less, or 19, or 24 and greater. So there's all kinds of different requirements that you're going to need with different dice. You can build a building even if you don't meet the requirements, but for each requirement you don't meet, you're going to take a negative point token that you'll have to score at the end of the game. That's it. You just go around the table doing this until you have 2 colors of dice that are down to 2 or less dice. And you'll finish out the round, and then you'll do final scoring. Final scoring is pretty easy because your buildings that you built over the course of the game. When you build a building, they give you many times special abilities that you can do. A 1-time any die of gray, black, or brown. Or 1 time I can add or subtract 2 from a die. Or I can flip a die to the other side. But they're also worth points here at the top, as well as some. This one gives me 2 points for every cactus that looks like that. Ooh, that would make this barbershop pretty valuable here. So you're going to add together those points that you scored over the course of the game. You're going to also look on your board. So this board here, this is the easy board, gives me 1 point for every plot that I put here where the requirements are matched, and 1 point for each single plot space and alley between buildings. So if I have 2 buildings and there's a single space in between those buildings, that gives me an extra bonus point. And this was a hard building, so it has the same requirements. There are various requirements that might be on other ones. Like, for example, the cactus one here gives me a point for each cactus with no building as I look at the different cacti that are available on here. So you're going to add that. You'll also lose points for negative things that you've gotten, and whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. Everything about the game, I think, for the quality-wise, you have the boards here, the double-sided boards with the different types of buildings on them. The symbology I don't find, but the linen finish on these. The cards have a linen finish. Now, the artwork on the cards is functional. Now, I think it needs to be functional. When I first saw this, I looked at these cards and I thought, why are they it looks like they almost use clip art, and I said, that's got to be worth points. And lo and behold, it was indeed 1 point for every barrel. So that's fine. That works well. The artwork in the background is fine. The fact that the buildings actually look like squares is fine because, again, it's functional in the purpose of this game. You also have things down here, like you can always, they call this gold pan, turn any 2 dice into a die of your choice, any 2 numbers into a die of your choice, and then a gold die can turn into one of the other 3 colors. So that's pretty useful stuff. But what I liked about the game component-wise the best are the dice themselves. Now, I like dice, but these are quality dice, but particularly these gold dice really pop on the table. So I was pretty impressed with that. And then it has little turn reference cards. The rules were pretty easy. And then there was a whole bunch of variant solo play and other things that you can do. So overall, I was pretty impressed with the components. I think Tumbletown is going to catch people off guard who might be expecting more in-depth to the game, because the game is literally take a building, take some dice, roll those dice, try to manipulate them if you can. At first you have your horse and the gold pan, but you know, you're like, I can do this, build this small little building, put it here, save some dice, next turn maybe I can get the bigger building. But there's not a lot of like, well, a lot of thinking ahead. No, you build buildings. You're trying to match the symbol on your horse because that gives you an extra point at the end of the game. And you might start going for the gold buildings, but they don't give you abilities during the game, so maybe they're best to save to the end. But really, it's kind of easy, free form, and I have no problem with that. I like that. It just grab some dice, roll them, manipulate them, build the buildings. It's fun. Like I said, you see this little town of dice. There's a lot of fun to that. I enjoy this game. I think it's fun. It's easy to teach people. It has a little bit of a Western flair to it, and nice dice. There is one small problem with the game, and it's mostly exasperated in 4 players. It's actually evident in all the player counts, but that is the fact that the game ends too soon. I was really a little disappointed with that. That's very rare. Usually I think games go too long. But in this one, you're building your buildings and you're like, oh, the dice are out already. I only built like 4 or 5 buildings. I want it to go longer. Now, there's a very easy fix for this with 2 or 3 players, and that is use all the dice. You know, it tells you to take a certain amount of dice out per player. With 4 players, you do use all the dice, so you can't. So that being said, I think the game plays best at 2, because you can use all the dice, and it's longer. Now, this may not be a problem for everybody. This may just be a me thing. It's just as I went through it, I was like, wow, I wanted to do more. I wanted to build more buildings. I wanted to get like a little engine going, and it ended. Now, I realized to add more dice would be an expensive proposition. But I'm thinking about hunting down some dice, although these are going to be hard dice to replicate, to put in the game, just because I think the game would do better. I think you could almost double the dice and it would be just as much fun. Now again, that's more of a minor complaint because it's me saying I want to play the game more. As it is, it's a pretty short game. You can play a pretty fast 30-minute game of this. 45 minutes, I guess, if you're being more thoughtful. And I like it. I like the idea of doing that, getting the buildings. You pick a card based on the dice it gives you and or the kind of building you're going to try to build that round. You pick buildings based on points, symbols that are on them, or this one lets me re-roll a die or whatever it might be. And it's fast, it's simple, it's fun, and I think a lot of people will enjoy it. So that's Tumbletown by Kevin Ross and Weird Draft Games. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time. Dice Tower Judgment approved.